Mr. Unstoppable. Derrick, I don't want to do too much because you're going to talk with us later and give us a lot of information on your story. But I want to talk to you and ask you a question based on your basketball background. And we don't have a ton of basketball players here tonight, but for those who are here, just kind of give us an idea of basketball, trying to make that transition from high school to college. There's a ton of high school basketball players, but when you try to go from high school to college, it gets really tough. And a lot of guys just don't, they're not allowed to play, nobody wants them kind of thing. So how hard is that transition to make because you were able to do that?
Absolutely. I think it's twofold. First, you really don't know how good you are. I think when you're competing at such a high level, you're questioning, can you play at a high level? And you don't really know if you play against the number one player in the country, if they're really number one, and why they have that number one ranking. And so it's really about, and I always try to tell people this, it's about building relationships with the people who you're around and building networks, because you don't know how you can get recruited. Sometimes it happens from a person who shared a story about you with somebody else who ends up saying, I'm gonna go take a look at that kid. And so I think part of that is understanding, you don't know, who's watching you when you're out there competing. So make sure that you build relationships all the time, and so that's what I would say.
Okay, cool. And then tell us a little bit about just you as a professional athlete.
It's interesting. So, and I'll share a little bit more, but I ended up playing Taipei, Taiwan. I did a tour of Japan. I spent 4 years in Australia. Had a great career, relationships. Actually, I got one of my friends coming to visit me here in Arizona that is living in Australia. And, one of the things I tell people is, regardless of what's happening within the program, relationships are the biggest piece of the whole thing. And so how you carry yourself, how you show up, how you communicate, how you look, people judge you all the time. You know that, right? They're judging you right now. And so my point is be careful how you present yourself, because every time you show up, you're already up under the microscope. I don't care what anybody says. So make sure that you represent yourself at a high level, so then you can represent who you are, not just as a person, but also as a player. I think all that stuff is invaluable.
So we've had a couple basketball players that have come through our program, and they drove me nuts. They went through college, they did not make it into the NBA, and I'm like, hey, there's leagues, and because I knew a couple guys that were playing down in Brazil, like you were saying, Australia. I knew a couple guys that were playing in Russia. I'm like, no, you can go play. There's all these different places on the globe you can play. But they were so devastated that they did not get into the NBA. They literally would not open their minds to playing in those places. What was your experience playing in those places? And do you wish, just in hindsight, do you wish that you would have just shut it down and not played?
First, I think that's a great question. I love that you asked me that question. I mean, I think, part of it is especially in the Black community, I only can speak for myself, we commit to the highest level possible. So we're trying to get to the biggest platform ever. But when you get your heart broken, because that's what happens when you don't make it to the league, FYI. And I had my heart broken a couple of times, but I didn't give up, because the truth is there were still experiences that I wanted to have. I wanted to enjoy my time playing. I wanted to continue to play. And so for me, I said, all right, I didn't make it to the league, but I'm gonna go over here, have an experience. I'm gonna go here, have an experience. And I always say it opened up my mind. And I always get people trying to understand, because a lot of our student athletes don't get a chance to travel outside of their community. So they don't really know what's going on. And I'm telling you, when you go to a different country, you get a chance to see and open up your eye, your mind, all that stuff, it changes how you see the world. And it really impacts how you view when you come back to the States and say, wait a minute. And so I'm looking forward. There's a lot I want to share, as you already can tell. But I'm chilling right now. I'm chilling.
All right, thank you. All right, let's go to Obadiah Cooper.